There comes a time in a harsh adventurer's world when one must make a choice. Fear the shadows lurking in foreboding woods and our own minds, or face the fires of battle spreading across the horizon like a setting sun. There comes a time when the beat of war drums thump louder and louder, coursing through the very earth's bones. When these times arise, legends embark on tenuous beginnings, while the rest shelter in long shadows, hoping for safety. Wildermyth is a compendium of those who choose to step forward, those who risk unrealized lives, literal limbs, and unsatisfied passions to protect those unable to defend themselves. These heroes will fight frenetic fiends and love deeply despite the horrors they experience. They'll explore treacherous caves, towering peaks, and glowing glades. They might even change the very essence of who they are. But like all things, these heroes will eventually fade, become fleeting glimpses into the past like dust motes floating in a forgotten tomb. Wildermyth gives an opportunity to live these tales from their first steps and shape the outcomes of the heroes, villages, and even adversaries they encounter. It does this with well-written scenarios, varied character traits, and an engaging tactical battle system. It caught me off guard with poignant stories that made me care more about my RNG-forged band of misfits than many carefully scripted linear adventures. It is a personal Game of the Year candidate, and it's something I won't soon forget. Wildermyth charges the player with shepherding fledgling do-gooders through 5 increasingly complex and difficult campaigns. As the protagonists grow from local legends to mythical heroes, player choices and the consequences stemming from them spread out like the tempting branches of a starseed tree. The narrative planted during the onset of the tutorial campaign, Age of Ulstrix, establishes that player choice can have a lasting impression, and that impression, along with its effects, only deepens as the player progresses. Unlike most RPGs with elements of choice, Wildermyth's campaigns are largely linear, with the bulk of its discretion hidden in side quests and random events. This shifts the focus from massive binary decisions, like what to do with the genophage in the Mass Effect series, to smaller personal selections ranging from pursuing a romantic partner to promising service to a turtle guardian after death. Most of these encounters do not impact the larger tale and lend intimacy to decisions. I found myself wondering what would be best for this character, rather than what would help me deal with the onslaught of mindless killing machines burninating the countryside. This shift from the typical Commander Shepard-esque good-bad dichotomy is refreshing, and allows greater freedom of writing from the various authors of Wildermyth. They didn't necessarily have to worry if an interesting romp to a forest deity will mess up the cohesiveness of the greater story, and because the writers didn't need to worry about it, neither did I. My main point here is this: Wildermyth actively fosters attachment to the characters encountered. Whereas games like XCOM leave room for a player to customize and mechanically rely on a soldier, which can form a strange sort of dependency, Wildermyth wants players to participate in major life events away from the battlefield. Yes, characters level up and gain skill points, which then get allocated at the player's behest. But when I look back at my time spent with Wildermyth, I don't recall how valorous or overpowered someone was in battle. Instead, I remember moments like my heroes starting families, or their noble sacrifice of not pursuing personal dreams to protect others. I can easily recall these touchstones and how they made me feel, which is a tremendous accomplishment for a procedurally generated game from a small development team. With each stop on the world map, I found myself looking forward to whatever adventure my team faced, and as time went on, I learned even previously seen questlines can have drastically different outcomes depending on the path I took, as well as who I brought along with me for the ride, which does bring me to my next point, repetition. Considering at the time of writing this script, I've logged around 45 hours and counting, I find judging Wildermyth's variety of quests a little difficult. On the one hand, Wildermyth is an RPG, and RPGs inherently contain some level of repetition. So, is Wildermyth overly repetitive? No, I don't think so. But around the 20 to 25 hour mark, I definitely noticed more and more of the same quests getting generated. On the other hand, I still saw new quests all the way until the end of the 5th and final campaign. Once I factor in multiple outcomes with the majority of the quest lines, I think Wildermyth does a great job of providing variety, even when playing for 50 hours. It's not perfect, but considering the volume of stories presented, I can't help but give credit where it's due. As for the actual campaign arcs, they definitely got stronger as I moved through them. The longer campaigns in particular scratched my lore itch and provided compelling heroes and villains. Mysteries presented never fully unveil themselves, which I can appreciate, and reminds me of other well-done minimalistic stories like Returnal. And speaking of villains, I want to point out that none of them are simply evil. There are motives and growth even for them, which is not an easy feat and something the video game industry sorely stumbles over on a regular basis. While I feel the most engaging part of the game is its myriad of stories, which is why I started my review talking about them, Wildermyth wouldn't be much of an experience without, the game portion. So let's talk about that next. Wildermyth's gameplay vertical slice is relatively simple. Story, world map, combat, repeat. After any given story sequence, whether mainline or side quests, the player is plopped onto the world map, which has a delightful, colorful style that blends nicely with the papercraft aesthetic. The overall objective is to move characters to unexplored regions, scout the terrain, deal with whatever may be found, and then either search for items or build up a settlement of some kind. It's important to perform these tasks so the heroes can receive equipment or materials for crafting at the end of the chapter. If a team doesn't clear enough territories, they might not have enough resources to upgrade gear, which is very important for keeping up with enemy growth. For every activity performed on the map, moving, scouting, building a bridge, etc., a number of days must pass. Depending on the makeup of the party, certain tasks may take longer or shorter periods, and this is a crucial factor to keep in mind. See, as the player goes about their business, opposing forces aren't idle. A timer in the upper right corner denotes when an invasion or enemy deck draw will occur. Both of these events can cause problems for the player. An invasion is pretty much what it sounds like. The enemy forces overrun friendly territories. The player must then rush to that portion of the map to defend or risk losing resources. The deck draw will add a card to the enemy pool. This could mean a particular enemy gets stronger or an entirely new one enters the fray. Either way, battles after the draw become tougher. Deck draws also occur after completing tasks. So, if the party fights after scouting, the enemy deck will grow. There's a push and pull element to exploring versus moving toward the main objective. Spending too long in any particular chapter might hinder the player's strategies or heroes in later ones. Controlling territories and leveling up the party go hand in hand, and while this section of the game is fairly simple from a strategic perspective, it does play a critical role both in the tactical combat and the periods between chapters. When a chapter ends, the heroes earn a number of years of peace based on the amount of tiles liberated from the enemy. The longer the period, the more resources earned, but like most systems in Wildermyth, there's a catch. Significant periods of peace mean the heroes will age. Aging can increase recovery, travel, and build times on the world map, which can lead to stronger enemy forces. Most importantly, once a character reaches their retirement age, they will leave the party for the rest of the campaign. Generally, this means losing a valuable veteran. So, while it's tempting to clear the entire map of enemies, it might not be the best strategy depending on how long the campaign is. Less peace between chapters means heroes stick around longer, but consequently, the player receives fewer resources. I enjoyed how connected the world map is to hero progression and combat scenarios, but it needs some tweaking to really shine in an already bright game full of ideas. Here are a few of my suggestions for improving this portion of the game. Building defenses on a tile is simply waiting for a meter to fill, which is not interesting. I would love to see more player agency here. Setting up defenses could literally be that. Let the player decide what barricades to erect and where. To complement this, local farmers and merchants could train as militia under the tutelage of a hero, and if developed enough, they might repel invading forces without the need for rescue. Travel time between areas could be reduced by introducing the ability to make roads or trails. This would also mean map size isn't as restricted, leading to maps double or even triple the size they are now. As it stands, previously freed tiles don't do much. Instead of letting them stagnate, players could invest in the tiles using legacy points or gold. These investments could be set to a certain number of chapters or days with a predetermined payout based on the tile. Something as simple as investments increases interaction with the map and adds another layer of complexity for those who wish to participate. And, just like building roads or trails, investing pushes the campaign threshold out from its current max of 5 chapters because players have more ways to sustain themselves. Overall, the world map portion of gameplay is enjoyable despite what I just said, but it is the weakest link in Wildermyth. It doesn't add nearly as much to the game as the stories or combat, which is a real shame because I feel there's a lot that could be done here. Perhaps in a future update or expansion, the world map can be more than just traveling from point A to point B. Wildermyth's combat falls into the same vein of XCOM, Final Fantasy Tactics, or any number of tactical RPGs. A squad of roguish, battle-hardened soldiers explores a map besieged by the enemy, and only smart choices made by the right combatants will pull out the victory. All that said, combat in Wildermyth, at least on the default difficulty, is not challenging. If you've played any of the previously mentioned games, you'll breeze through the campaigns. If you're a veteran of tactical RPGs, I recommend either bumping up the difficulty after the first campaign, or playing on Carved in Stone mode, which limits the game to one save file with permanent decisions. This is my preferred way to play as it adds severe consequences for not paying attention. How a battle begins is dependent on what events lead to its inception. There may be penalties or buffs to the party based on decisions made before. These modifiers could be the result of side quests, establishing defenses, or whether or not the party patrolled the area already. Once the fight's modifiers are displayed, the real battle can begin. Generally, the player will go first, followed by monsters. This back and forth of acting and reacting has a pleasant rhythm conducive to planning several turns at a time. Heroes can move or perform one of multiple actions based on their class, level, and environment. At the start of every turn, each hero is allotted 2 action points, or AP. Movement, attacks, and special abilities cost AP, and the amount is determined by either player choice or a base cost. Heroes do not have a set order and may be selected to perform at the player's choosing. Tough situations can often be outmaneuvered simply by deciding the correct order heroes need to act. Unlike other tactical RPGs, Wildermyth has very few abilities that heal a party member who's taken one too many hits. The game encourages a healthy combination of aggressive assaults and hardy defenses. The inability to throw a potion or cast a curative spell heightens the tension when a hero is in a deadly predicament. Several times I watched in horror as one of my best characters took hit after hit because I stupidly placed them somewhere I shouldn't, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do to keep them going. So, what's the penalty when a hero does reach 0 HP? Well, typically the player will be presented with 2 or 3 choices. One will always be for the hero to retreat from battle, but suffer a permanent hit to their HP for the remainder of the campaign. This doesn't exclude them from horrible scarring that affects their charisma, or losing limbs, which limits equipment choices. The other options usually revolve around the hero making a last stand, dealing massive damage around them, or tremendously boosting allies. Both of those options result in the hero dying. Obviously, that's a bad thing, because you can't use that hero anymore. But there are bigger consequences to a hero passing into the great unknown. These outcomes relate to the legacy system, but I'm not going to discuss that until character growth. Another consequence of taking severe damage on the battlefield is the hero's need to rest and heal after the fight. Idle heroes lead to fewer resources, less experience for leveling up, and stronger opponents. In other words, making a mistake in combat can lead to a cascade of problems throughout the campaign. This only serves my earlier point of how important positioning and planning in combat really is. And on that note, I do have a critique of Wildermyth's combat, and that is all battlefields lack verticality. Unlike every tactical game I've ever played, Wildermyth simply does not factor verticality into its maps. Everything is flat, and this is frankly strange considering some of the places the heroes fight are mountains, valleys, and towns where one would expect hills, cliffs, or buildings. The flatness also removes a significant tactical staple to planning moves and reacting to enemy assaults. It's honestly a strange omission, and I have to knock this design choice. I have a feeling this occurred because of the small size of the developer. Adding verticality to a procedurally generated game would, I assume, increase potential bugs and require a lot more QA testing. But really, I have no idea why the decision was made. Whatever the reason may be, I still wish verticality was present. Moving on from that complaint, Wildermyth does an excellent job of mixing up the objective of main campaign fights. Considering a lot of the common battles are about eliminating all enemies, having these curveballs can really push stratagems to breaking if a player isn't careful. Like I said, movement and positioning is really important in Wildermyth, but so is the makeup of your team. Classes, leveling up, and transformations play a critical role in pushing your small troop of monster mashers to the heights of mythical legends. Another part that plays a critical role is liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. It really helps out the channel and lets me know I'm heading in the right direction. All characters in the game, with the sole exception of main antagonists, are randomly generated. The most obvious differences are their appearances. A variety of skin tones, hairstyles, and facial features will get jumbled together to form the heroes and NPCs of the world. As a side note, I highly recommend downloading some of the face and hair mods available, as they can drastically boost the variety. Without adding these mods, I found a lot of characters had very similar looks, which was a little jarring. In addition to appearance, a hero will have personalities assigned to them, ranging from greedy to romantic to leader to loner. These traits determine how their voice will be shaped, and in turn, their interactions with others. What random events appear is also decided upon by the makeup of the party. In particular, a lot of transformations are dependent on the personality of the heroes, so even though you might want a certain character to become a corporeal star-throwing demigod, that might not be possible. The interactions between party members will evolve over time too. Some might fall in love and have children, others might become bitter rivals, perhaps so bitter they decide to part ways with the troop. The battlefield will bring these relationships out in the open. Romantic partners gain extra damage if they attack a monster that hurt their spouse, and rivals will egg each other on as they try to one-up themselves. These bonuses aren't something that can be relied on, but occasionally, a well-timed boost caused by a lover's revenge will down a tough enemy. With the character's appearance and personality traits in place, the last piece of the hero puzzle is their class. I'll start by giving a brief synopsis of each one, and then I'll go into detail on how classes evolve over the course of a campaign. Warriors are tanks and melee brutes designed to hold an enemy's attention away from weaker classes. They have higher HP and the thickest armor available. They can dish out the pain as strongly as they can take it. Hunters play the classical role of rogues. Bows, daggers, traps, and status effects are their weapons of choice. They can slip into Greyveil to backstab or escape danger. They're the most consistent, although not the highest, source of long-range damage. Mystics use the environment to attack, bind, and trap enemies, but they can also boost friendlies. They can easily put out the most damage of any class to a large area, but because they are dependent on the environment and require extra time to set up abilities, sometimes they struggle to keep pace with enemy or party movements. That said, they are also the most versatile class and can become melee powerhouses, deadly status deliverers, or the ultimate support character. Each hero can level up a maximum of 7 times. Upon leveling up, that hero can choose one of 4 randomly selected skills or abilities to incorporate into their repertoire. These selections can be further upgraded on subsequent levels. Because there are so few levels available, each upgrade decision impacts those down the line, even for other characters. Synergies between classes become more important the longer a campaign runs. I highly recommend taking your time choosing skills, as improper selections can really reduce the potency of your heroes. Now that you have an idea of what the 3 classes are like, you might think, that's it? 3 whole classes? And yeah, I had that thought too when exploring the first couple of hours of Wildermyth's world. But besides the variety available just with these 3 classes, which I must clarify is a lot more than it sounds, the game will provide random opportunities to transform a character into something else entirely. I won't spoil these beyond what I've shown in passing, as discovering them is exciting and a big draw for exploration. These transformations act as another way to enhance a character with new abilities or stat modifiers. There are, of course, trade-offs for using a transformation. A character may get new attacks, but can no longer carry weapons. They might develop crystalline armor at the cost of speed. Nothing here is free, and the pros and cons of a transformation must be weighed against the class of the hero in mind. Combining the 3 base classes with the multitude of skill paths and many transformations available gives a lot more complexity than one might think at first glance. As someone who enjoys Borderlands, Remnant from the Ashes, and other build or loot focused games, Wildermyth gave me a lot to chew on. Most builds I've created aren't necessarily better than any other, which shows the development team kept balance in mind when creating skills and abilities. This is something I can appreciate to a high degree, since so many skill trees in other games are lackluster or contain no meaningful choices. Taking into consideration everything I've covered thus far, I haven't even mentioned the significant number of items available to plunder. Equipment is everywhere and results from almost every activity in the game. However, much like the world map gameplay, equipment in Wildermyth is a bit of a letdown. Most items just aren't very interesting, and the ones that are interesting are usually locked behind random events. If I had to describe equipment in Wildermyth in one word, it'd be pragmatic. You simply aren't going to be blown away by anything you find. My next topic is the legacy system, which is one of the best innovations to tactical RPGs I've experienced in some time. Eventually, heroes will retire from adventuring, and when this happens, they can pass on some of their knowledge to other soldiers for an automatic level up. Another option for retirees is adding a few legacy points to the troop's stash. However, neither choice replaces the loss of my 79-year-old grandma warrior. So what happens to retired badasses? Well, after a player completes a campaign, any characters that survive or retired through its duration are given the option to enter the legacy pool. Legacy characters can show up in later campaigns as main protagonists or just another hero. Depending on how they're recruited, a legacy character, which I'm now shortening to LC, gets the ability to skip ahead a few levels and pick from an assortment of abilities they've learned in a previous adventure, as well as retain any transformations or equipment they had. Having LC select from previously learned abilities is a huge boon, as RNG is removed from their initial growth. This allows specialization earlier and makes them stronger than any randomly generated newbie. Retaining transformations means LCs can develop those transformations beyond what only one campaign would allow. The stacking of equipment, abilities, and transformations means recurring LCs become more and more powerful. It also means their personality is shaped by repeat campaigns. See, Wildermyth keeps track of an LC's adventures, including relationships and traumatic events. If they get a scar, it will carry over. If they have children, they might run into their offspring. The more campaigns I completed, the more I cared about my LCs. Not only did they become valuable on the battlefield, but their relationships and decisions started to compound. Party member interactions deepened the longer I played, and added weight to battles that might put legacy characters at risk. Losing a greenhorn is one thing, losing a legacy character is brutal. LCs that survive multiple campaigns can level up their legacy status. The more their legacy rank is upgraded, the more abilities and skills they can choose from when recruited. Again, Wildermyth pushes the player to establish mechanical and personal stakes with their heroes, not unlike Dungeons & Dragons or legacy board games such as Gloomhaven. This system is wonderful and is a huge selling point for the game. I don't think Wildermyth would be nearly as engaging or worthwhile without the character progression it has, and I honestly wish more RPGs implemented something similar. Characters in Wildermyth are not going to be as well established or written as linear single-player RPGs, but they make up for it the same way one might grow attached to Alicia, Rad, and Lavian from Final Fantasy Tactics, and if you understand this reference, we can be friends. Put another way, Wildermyth encourages the building of your own stories in a very literal sense. I roleplayed as my party members. I altered their backstories in the editing tool. I did what I could to level up underleveled heroes just so I could keep them around longer, even if they actually weren't that great compared to others. I tried to make decisions I thought those characters would approve of. I got out of Wildermyth what I put into it. So if you're the type of person who follows several generations of one Sims family, I think you will appreciate Wildermyth's procedurally generated characters. In case you didn't notice, Wildermyth's aesthetic is rooted in pop-up storybooks. Everything is flat with limited animations, yet the style provides a ton of depth. Story segments play out as comic books with varied framing and directions. Pauses for dialogue and quiet moments are given time to breathe, while intense actions play swiftly for emphasis. Character faces change to match emotions and lend weight to more subtle lines. Since there are no voiceovers, the large amounts of text and dialogue harken back to the sprawling PlayStation 1 epics like Final Fantasy VII or Grandia, where critical reading was fundamental to understanding the story. I largely have those early games to thank for my love of reading, and it was pleasant to return to that style of RPG. There is also an editor available to craft stories of your own. All of the characters, backgrounds, items, and fonts are easily combined to create a unique adventure. In fact, all of the backgrounds used in the introduction or title cards of this video were created using the resources open to players. I had a lot of fun mixing and matching different elements to get what I wanted. It's pretty remarkable to see what can be done with a few simple tools. As for animations, in battle, an attack might be as simple as a rogue leaning away before letting loose an arrow, or a warrior barreling into an enemy not unlike a child banging two action figures together. But there is a certain charm to these limited movements that match the comic book presentation of story segments. Another key ingredient to the presentation is the music. Candy Emberly's soundtrack is beautiful and fitting for a series of tales around a campfire. It is equal parts grand and subtle. She captures wonder and scale with moving orchestrations, but leaves softer, quieter melodies for the many heart-to-hearts your battle-weary companions will have. I tried to find a copy of the OST to purchase, not only because I wanted to use it in the review, but because I truly enjoyed it so much. Unfortunately, I had no luck finding it. I did message the developer about purchasing the OST, and they did make it sound like that will become available eventually, so here's to hoping that anyone who wants to purchase it will be able to buy it down the road. There is one additional topic I want to cover: game modes. Wildermyth's main attraction is undoubtedly the 5 storied campaigns, which I've talked about at length. This is definitely where you'll want to begin your journey and gives all the tools needed to learn how the game works. However, there are 2 other modes available. Hey everyone, I'm in the middle of editing and realized that I forgot a game mode. Inside the editor menu is a function for new battle. In there, you're going to find a huge list of individual battles and scenarios that will challenge your mettle and know-how of the combat system. You'll find things like having to defend a map with only farmers and no heroes. So if you've kind of run the well dry with the rest of the game, the campaign, and the additional scenarios I'm going to talk about, this is a way that you can kind of spice things up. Additionally, the developer adds new battles on a regular basis, so whenever there's a patch or an update, you'll often find more scenarios available for you to check out. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that was mentioned since there is a lot of content there. Back to the main video. Non-story campaigns in both normal and legacy types allow the player to make their way through a set number of chapters without any story leading the way. This is essentially a stripped-down version of the main campaigns that can be used as a playground for new builds and strategies, or just a quick romp through some bad guys. I think this mode would be improved tremendously if some of the recommendations I mentioned earlier were implemented. An infinite mode would also be pretty neat to see. Along those same lines is the multiplayer mode. Yes, you heard that right. Wildermyth has a multiplayer mode. This mode supports couch co-op and online play. Essentially, each player takes control of one hero, and other than that, the experience is largely the same as the single-player one. I haven't messed around with this, but I would love to give it a try over Discord sometime as a pseudo D&D experience. I'm going to give my final thoughts shortly, but first, I want to thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like the video, and if you want to see more reviews like this one, please subscribe and check out my RPG playlist. Alright, so what are my final thoughts? Well, Wildermyth is a unique experience, which is a hard thing to do with the volume of video games released every year. Its best parts, the procedural characters, stories, legacy aspects, and campaigns are amazing and provide a journey unlike any other game on the market. These parts alone are worthy of my seal of approval, but that's not to say the tactical combat or strategic world map aren't fun, because they certainly are. They just don't stand out as much comparatively. If you're a fan of tactical RPGs or story-driven campaigns, you owe it to yourself to play Wildermyth. There is a lot it has to offer and is easily worth the money. As I stated in my introduction, Wildermyth is a Game of the Year candidate for me. It has almost everything I could want from this style of game, and it deserves a lot more attention than it's received since release. It's a rare breed of game that creates more stories than it tells. An entire mythos surrounding randomly generated characters will form in your own personal headcanon. Heroes will rise and fall at your decisions. Lives forever changed because you willed it. Wildermyth feels like the beginning of something great, and that makes sense considering this is Worldwalker Games' debut outing. If this is what they are capable of on their first attempt, I can only imagine what's in store. Thanks again for watching, and have yourself a good one.